chair of the PMEA Council for Teacher Training, Recruitment, and Retention. So this is part of what we're trying to do with our training thing with Council for TTRR. Tonight, we're going to try to balance the pros and cons of social media. I happen to believe that we probably will add up more of the little happy faces than the little unhappy faces, but we will have some differing opinions about social media, whether or not there are some problems using social media in students. So, and you can add up the little guys if you want to. How many do we get of happies and unhappies? Best way to get started is to throw you right in the deep end. And this guy named R. Osterman is a math teacher. He probably said it best than anybody I can think of, is this: Facebook and teachers should never mix, maintaining professionalism and appropriate relationships. So he was playing with his video, as you will see. Let's take a peek.
Hey, TNT crew. Lately, you've been talking a lot about Facebook and teachers, and where the appropriate crossover is between the two. And I gotta tell you, I'm a little bit concerned. I am a teacher, and so just a quick overview of how I use Facebook. Here's me. Here's my Facebook experience. And I am on Facebook a lot, so there's a connection there. I use it for photos, like him. Or I use it to talk to family. My dad's on it a lot. I also talk to all my friends from high school who have all my embarrassing stories. And the embarrassing stories they don't have, my family has. And I think there's some embarrassing photos too. I try to watch my tags. But this is my Facebook experience. Now, here are my students. They're down here. To be a professional, there has to be this wall between us. Because I'm the teacher, they are the student. You can be friendly with students, but you should never be their friends, because that leads to all kinds of headaches. It's fiction, but it's scary to a teacher. Now, there is one gap in this wall, and that is my content math. Now, see, I can reach my students through that content. I can be friendly with them through that content. I can connect to them, but I always have to remember I have to work through my content, through my class. Now, the students have Facebook. They're always involved in it. They have their Twitter. And they're always talking on that. And that's fine. I've got mine and they've got theirs, and we're on opposite sides of this wall. But this isn't the only way I reach them. Everyone talks about how great Facebook is as the social tool. But they've got their own things connected to their Facebook like I have to mine. And just like I don't want them here, I really should not be here. Now, I can get to them through Facebook if I have to. I maintain a blog with my class that I update, that they can access, and they can get information, they can get lessons, they can get postings about assignments and when things are due. And there's nothing stopping them from liking or sharing anything off that blog on Facebook, or retweeting it, tweeting it. I don't do Twitter, see, it's not okay. Whatever you do when you take a blog post and say, hey, Mr. O wrote something on his blog, check it out. They can do that, and within this circle of friends, within their Facebook community, they can share that stuff. I also have a YouTube channel where I'm posting videos of my lessons, going through problem by problem. And again, they can directly digest that information. They can put it on Twitter. They can post it on Facebook. And it does raise the question, how many more of these things do I need to do to engage my student? I'm already directly interacting with them in class. I'm providing videos. I'm providing write-ups. I'm engaging their parents. There are their parents over here. Through the content, through the videos, through the blog. How much more do I need to do and still safely have this wall of separation between myself and them to remain a professional? Wall of professionals. Because that is one of the hardest things to maintain when you work with teenagers. Anyway, hopefully this very clear diagram clears up why teachers should not be involved with students on Facebook.
And you probably feel the same way, possibly, because Facebook wasn't around when I started teaching. So it was not considered a tool at that point. for me to use with students, even with the ways he said. Approximately 7 in 10 Americans use social media, according to Pew Research. And of course, some of these Americans are educators. And if you've been watching the news, you've been hearing issues of discipline of teachers for inappropriate tweets, photos, updates. Therefore, we could be understandably nervous about using any form of social media. So today, we're going to go for a couple essential targets. And I actually have to give the Pennsylvania Department of Education full credit for these four or so targets. What are professional expectations of teachers with regards to their electronic interactions with their students? Why and how should teachers control their brand? How do teachers' use of emerging technologies, things like social networking, cell phones, whatever, present challenges to maintaining appropriate student-teacher boundaries? And what are some of the potential consequences if we misuse this technology? Now you can see there's this Pennsylvania Professional Standards and Practices Commission. That's the people who do our code of conduct. And they have created this very extensive, I don't know if anyone's seen it before, I was surprised to find it, toolkit on ethics. And one unit is about technology, Unit 4. So tonight is the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I guess a good place to start is this definition. Now, social media, in a broad sense, is just sharing content and networking. I hate it when they use the word social in the definition. Webster does it, Oxford does it. So I guess we better define social network. The first definition that comes up is inappropriate for teachers. Network of social interactions and personal relationships. There's your first unhappy face. And a dedicated website or application which enables users to communicate with each other. We'll put a happy face on that, you know, with sharing information, comments, and messages, but not personal information and relationships. That's social network. Now, if you take those two definitions, almost everything is something to do with emerging technology in teaching. So if you're communicating with students. I looked at what this history of the internet was. I don't know if you folks, I wasn't around the 1900s. Did you know that Tesla was the first person that came up with world wireless system? It was his vision that we were eventually going to connect each other. That's grandfather Tesla, not current Tesla, obviously. And then people started working on searchable media storage. How do you deal with all of this data and how do you search on it and store it? A guy named Licklider actually came out in 1960s with something called the Intergalactic Computer Network. I was trying to think, when was Star Trek intergalactic? Are you kidding me? But that's what he called it. And very soon after that, in the late 60s into the 70s, something called ARPANET was created. If you can tell by that map of the United States, little dots, those were giant computers that were sending data across the country, probably in colleges and universities. We did not have our little Apple II computers or Macintoshes or PCs yet. That went through the 70s. We had these two gentlemen working on what we call our IP address, the identity of your computer, and basically the standard for transferring all this data. And we have to give Tim Berners-Lee the credit for coining World Wide Web, which is not exactly the internet, because there are a lot of ways you can transfer data on the internet, but that's that thing you see at the bottom of www. World Wide Web. He gets credit in the 1990s. Now you'll see the timeline's going to start scrunching because lots are happening. The first time we see something about education is Blackboard. And those gentlemen were into trying to create a virtual learning environment. At first, it was pretty clumsy and was not an easy interface. That's 1998. Ta-da, MySpace shows up. Does anybody remember that? 2003. I remember it. I remember ignoring it as fast as I saw it. It was one of the earliest social networks. And they did that in 2003. And Facebook shows up immediately as a fix to that. And this, Mark Zuckerberg came up with a much better way of doing it. And in the same year, 2004, Flickr sharing photos showed up. Now it's by year, because year after, YouTube sharing videos. And then we have a gang of things starting to happen. And they're happening so fast in our technology. Twitter comes out in 2006. Isn't that our president's favorite social media? And the first time you hear something about education besides Blackboard, well, at least in my research, was flipped classrooms. That concept where a student would go home and consume or learn about the content of your subject and then come to school to do homework in front of the teacher, helping them or answering questions, flipping the two roles between homework and, say, lecture or whatever. Now, the only reason that was possible, this online learning, is a program called Camtasia, which I was really very interested in, but is a very expensive program today. And it allowed you to record your desktop and video and create media, whatever you would like in terms of teaching your students. So all that happened in 2006. So I guess the question is, I don't know if our mics are on, how many of these things do you guys use? Go ahead and throw out what of the social media regular platforms are you using right now?
Facebook.
Anybody using Twitter?
I use Facebook.
Or just personally?
Well, probably just for yourself, right? Personally. How about things you use just for yourself?
Facebook.
Facebook, Skype. Anybody using Skype? Okay, Vimeo. Anybody know what Vimeo is?
I've heard of it.
The schools may actually store video presentations on Vimeo. WordPress. I was able to create a free website using WordPress, and that's when I started writing all my blog posts. Instagram. No one's in Instagram?
I'm on Instagram.
Okay.
I think I'm on it through Facebook.
And then there's LinkedIn. Anybody get a job through LinkedIn? No? Anyone know what LinkedIn is?
I think I have an account with it.
Yeah, I know what it is.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess the next question in big red letters is, how many of these do you use with students? Any of them? Anybody use Facebook with students?
No.
Not with students, but we use Facebook with parents. We use Facebook. What the kids are doing in school.
Do you have teacher?
You could call it that. It's like our department runs it.
Okay. So all these things started showing up simultaneously. It started beginning in the 80s. We had school leaders that told us, abstinence, stay away from Facebook with the students. Bad stuff. But at the same time, they started introducing everything from online bulletin boards, teacher pages, I call them. I think ours was called Centricity. We had to learn how to do something and put it up there, and it would be our agenda, maybe a general thing like you had at your open house, our pictures, scare the children. Electronic grade books, homework pages, Edline showed up. The Blackboard branched out. I don't know if anybody has ever used blended schools. Yes, these are all social medias, and they're also for students and for parents, and they are communicating feedback both ways in most cases. So that we better learn how to use the innovation, because it's going to come anyway. So Pennsylvania Department of Education says, well, be careful. And social media in education has a lot of problems, mostly because we blur the lines of appropriate professionalism and relationships between the teacher and the student. It's very hard to keep that boundary when if you're speaking on a very personal basis. Now, younger teachers sometimes say, I want to make the learning meaningful. Therefore, I want to tell them about my life and what this means too. But there is a very careful way, we have to walk very carefully, a gray area of maintaining the boundary. And there's some who believe that technology is destroying this boundary. We have trust, the operative foundation word for our relationships, We are fiduciaries, if you've ever heard that term before. We are legally bound to take care of our students' best interests and safe environment. Just like lawyers and doctors, we are fiduciaries. And if we become too close to a student, a confidant, a friend, we violate that student-teacher boundary, mainly because we create an ambiguity. Maybe they can't figure out, hey, you're the teacher and I'm the student. And this can foster inappropriate actions. So sometimes it's too close. That's the main reason, main disadvantage for using social media. But there are other reasons, like, for example, nothing's private. And I think today, even more so than any other time in our lives, you have no privacy when you're on social media. I think Facebook's even changed their policies several times, and you are up for people reading your posts and so forth. So it's pretty bad. It can be copied, printed against your will. If you ever had a post, somebody could screenshot it. And the thing is, it may not have been a bad thing. You may have just had a moment where you made a comment or something, and out of context, it may be interpreted by a third party as a violation of the code of conduct. And it is our responsibility to control our public brand, your persona, how you want to be perceived, your reputation. If you mess up your brand, you can impinge on your effectiveness as a teacher. I guess one way to say this is a driver ed teacher probably is in a lot of trouble, will lose his job if he gets a DUI conviction. And a health teacher, talking about not using drugs, if he's arrested for drug possession, that sort of thing. If you have a problem with your reputation, probably you might as well just resign and go somewhere else if you're lucky. Gesundheit? Does somebody sneeze? Something.
It was my dog. I'm sorry.
Oh, I wish my dog and your dog could have fun together, but they're downstairs. They know I'm up here and they're getting angry with me. No one else is home. Okay, there are some hidden dangers we have to watch out for. Privacy settings. I'll play a little of this. Unfortunately, this is a teacher should know better. 39 years experience, and she got nailed by Facebook.
We have a story now about a teacher who flunked Facebook 101. June Talbot-Disciple, a supervisor of high school math and science in Cohasset, Massachusetts, a Boston suburb, wrote comments on her Facebook wall that she thought could only be seen by 50 friends. She described students as germ bags, called parents arrogant and snobby, and said she was not looking forward to another year at school.
You would never do that, right?
Read that, the superintendent asked her to resign, and joining us now exclusively is the now unemployed June Talbot-Disciple. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Such an interesting story because you think you're in the absolute privacy of this group of, what, several dozen friends, right?
Yeah, it was about 50 friends and family members.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
You view the things that you said in context.
Right.
They're far less incendiary, from my perspective.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Right. Because, for instance, you're talking about the kids being germ bags. You've gotten sick how many times that school year?
I was sick most of the school year.
Right.
I even ended the school year with pneummonia.
Mm-hmm. So you've been on repeated medications and everything else. And so in this particular case, you're referring to the students as?
Germ bags. But, it was a joke.
Right. My gosh. So, and then you go on to say, now I remember why I stopped teaching. They're all, because they are. You go into a school, it's like kennel cough.
Right.
Everybody is sick at one time or another. Right. Other comments you made, though, were about the parents. And that was something about a conflict going on in the school, right?
Right. Actually, the school district has been going through a lot of turmoil. And there's been a lot of conflict between the teachers union and the administration and the school committee and the community in general.
Right. And so then that ends up, had you any idea that any of the things that you were saying could have been viewed by anyone else other than the people that you thought were your friends on Facebook?
No, I had my privacy settings set. And I know that that's the case because of a conversation that my students had about, gee, Dr. Seipel has a face page. That's great. Let's go look at it. And another student say, no, you can't. It's all blocked out.
Right.
And Facebook made changes to their privacy policy. And I just recently looked up to see how that could have happened. And it turns out when they made that, they default things to being open.
Right.
You have to opt out of that.
Yeah. So every time it changes,
Every
even
time it
though,
changes.
and how would you know on a day-to-day basis unless you're really paying attention?
You had to be really paying attention. And I was working 12 and 14 hours a day and very, very busy. So, you know, even if an email or something like that did come across, I didn't see it. If it had been on Facebook, I actually don't use Facebook that much.
Probably be using it a lot less in the future.
Probably.
Just very quickly, your message to other people who would be using Facebook. I think you were certainly caught in a very sort of innocent communication with friends, cost you your livelihood.
Yes.
What's your message?
My message is that you have to be very, very diligent, far more diligent than I am. I am a technology person, and yet I got caught short.
Yeah.
And even today, I was looking at the newspaper, and there was an article about places coming out.
Yeah.
And that's a GPS function that if you have that on your cell phone for Facebook, anybody can find out where you are
At any given moment.
at any given moment. And you have to opt out, not opt in.
Wow.
Well, that's a terrible story. That's a personal Facebook page that she's sharing with just her family and her friends. Okay, give you some unhappy faces. You keep them count. People get mad at me when I use this slide. Let's debunk the free speech myth. Teachers do not have free speech. And this is NEA. It's not my quote. They believe that if you think you can post anything you want, party pics, diatribes about the boss, hey, it's on your own time. The courts don't support that. If a school district, now you could be in court over it, if a school district says, hey, this is considered intemperance, this is considered unethical, it's not really well defined what those terms are. And National Education Association says, just don't go walking out there thinking you have that First Amendment right. Okay, but I think those of you who have been teaching for a lot of years, a lot of this is common sense, sound judgment. And again, Professional Standards and Practices Commission talks about don't engage anything that might raise concerns about the propriety. Don't exchange anything of a personal nature, notes, emails, or communications. Don't place yourself in a situation that might pose a risk to students. Always you are thinking about the best interests of the students. By the way, our code of conduct says that if we have a staff member who is violating our code of ethics, we're supposed to report it. And one of the first ways you can tell there's an inappropriate relationship with a staff and a student is if for some reason you see the interests of the teacher seem to be ahead of the interests of the student. Always are looking at best interests of the student and are mindful of our reputations. On and off duty, not much of a difference. And they use this word efficacy in the classroom, or if you embarrass the school entity, the district, or damage the position as a moral exemplar in the community. It is a conservative career that we're in. And we accept that. I loved it. I didn't have a problem with that. So I hate to beat a dead horse here, and there's another unhappy here. Anybody remember the story of Brownsville Area School District? This is a true story, a true newscast.
A teacher here at Brownsville Area High School was suspended for 30 days after someone turned a picture of her with a male stripper over to authorities. The teacher will spend 30 school days at home without pay after being caught in a photograph during a bridal shower.
As a fun gesture, some of the people who were invited thought it would be fun to make the party a little bit more exciting.
Ryan Mitchell was invited but couldn't attend. Her friends hired a male stripper to surprise the bride. One teacher was caught in the frame when someone took a picture of the stripper, who was reportedly wearing a small undergarment. The teacher, though, was fully clothed and reportedly not posing. Then the picture was posted on Facebook, and eventually administrators saw it.
She was caught in the photograph. She was in the picture.
The district superintendent won't comment on the suspension.
Former superintendent.
It is a personnel and contractual matter and can only be discussed by the board in executive session.
The district's attorney told me he has advised none of the school board members to talk about it either. Attorney Jeremy Davis also told me over the phone he wants this issue to go away as quickly as possible and that there won't be public comment allowed on the topic at tonight's school board meeting. The people and students are talking about it.
But they're telling the kids not to do something, so why should they? I mean, regardless whether they're fully dressed or not, you know, they supposed to be setting an example for the kids.
Yeah, okay. She brings up the fact that would it be any different if it was a male teacher at a bachelor party and getting photographed in front of a female dancer? I'm not going to go there. Basically, this teacher, whoever this was, lost 30 days without pay and out of her pension as well. Now, you can see over here, fictitious case studies, PSPC, our commission. And online, there are cases of things dealing with technology and oopses, basically. The case 2 was the one we just heard that was a real story, but they make this as based on actual scenarios. They have one here about a teacher texting a 16-year-old female student, and of course that was inappropriate, even if it was academic in nature at first. It apparently the text became more explicit, and the parents were eventually found the texting history. Case number 3, a teacher had a district-owned laptop and apparently it was not working correctly. So he handed it over to his tech staff or the tech support group, and they found pornographic pictures or access to websites were done during school hours. Each of these teachers would have to resign immediately and probably lose their certificates. This one's sort of dumb. I can't imagine this happening. Maybe this is true. A teacher, this is case 4, named Elizabeth, was teaching reading at the middle school, and apparently her kids did a very good job on a performance on an exam. So she performed one of her cheerleading routines for her 8th graders. Of course, there was a male in the back of the classroom who videotaped the whole routine, and it eventually ended up being posted. And the parents were outraged because it seemed that it was very suggestive dancing. She wouldn't have been able to do that, I believe. And the other, I said common sense. Somebody sent a picture of the superintendent who was retiring at the end of the year, and some guy decided to have a joke and make it appear that she was spending her retirement on a topless beach. And then he intended to attach that picture and send it to his friend, but instead he sent it reply all. There are other ones like that. Now, these are fictitious case studies if you wanted to look at about technology. But what's really scary and nauseating, to be honest, is on the PDE, Professional Standards Practice Commission website, there's searching. You can search for adjudications and orders. These are true stories of teachers who probably lost their certificate or suspended or expelled. And I mean, it just goes on and on. This is just 2018. I think there are pages and pages of them. You can click on any one of them and discover what the judgment was. So I did find some social media rules so that we can bring this back to center. The American Board for Certification of Educators has actually a pretty good set of rules. The first thing they say is you better know your school district's social media policy. Our state doesn't have a real direct one. Never friend or follow students. Keep your profile photos clean. Don't affiliate yourself with your school on a personal profile. Do not geotag or give out your location of your posts. The thing about snaps are forever. Screenshot of your posts. Don't mention your school or the names or students in any post. Set your accounts to private. Never complain about your job, and never post photos of your students. Now, I didn't start Facebook. I started about 7 years before I retired. I found out, I better stay away from it. And then I think a year before I retired, I went back into my Facebook account. Someone had sent me a message that said, "Are you the Mr. Fox that teaches music at Upper St. Clair?" 7 years, like almost immediately when I first opened the account. And I responded with a one-word answer, yes, 7 years late. I was probably the slowest response of any messenger. I realized that Facebook would be the only way I could reach my alumni, graduates, find out how they're doing. None of their addresses, physical addresses, or even old emails are going to be the same. So I started opening up. These two rules I have trouble with, I'll be honest, as American Board of Educators. I do affiliate myself with school on my personal profile. I'm a cheerleader for my former school district. And I do mention my school in my posts. I don't mention the staff or students. So I can't say these are hard and fast rules. Maybe a teacher who is in the middle of teaching their teaching career can consider to avoid affiliating your school. Does anybody know Scott Sheehan, though? He's one of my Facebook heroes. He has probably the greatest Facebook page I've ever seen about bragging and congratulating his kids. And he does affiliate himself with all those groups. Now, there's 7 rules for using social media in class. Education Week has given us these. If you decided you were going to try to use some form of social network in class, obviously separate it from personal account. You know, and if you're the only one doing this, and I don't know how you would do this in a general music class, for example, but if you decided to use the social media, but you're the only staff member doing it, get it informed written consent from the parents. This number 3 is really important. Think twice before posting anything. My wife was always one of those that when she gets hot and she writes an email reply, she sleeps on it. The next day looks back at it and usually deletes it. But not a good idea to ever post something. Maybe be in a hurry is not good on social media. Got to get this out. Got to get this out. Know your privacy settings. Again, they talk about the policies, know what they are. And everyone, I think my school district was very good at this. The Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, affectionately called FERPA. If you push wheelchairs at the hospital, they have HIPAA. That's the health information protection. And apparently there's another one I'm not as familiar with, Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. You should be aware that and I know teachers did this, if you had a 3rd period free and you went to the teacher's room, sat down and get another cup of coffee, somebody comes in, you should hear what Joey did in class today. That's breaking the law. You are not permitted to carry tales about students just because the teacher isn't hired in the district doesn't mean he or she should be hearing a confidential story about a student. So we need to be aware what FERPA is. I would venture guess a lot of people violate this law and don't even know they have. I go home and tell my wife the stories. That's also a violation. Always remain positive, professional. So yes, there are mitigations. You have to be careful of the risks, and you can mitigate them. You can make social media a tool. Things are starting to happen. I mean, starting in those 80s, we started getting a lot of websites that we could go to that can help us in our teaching. I got a little carried away on this slide here, but I hope you can come back and look at these later. A whole bunch of music theory websites and it's not a feedback chain. They're not getting the students are not getting feedback except that the answers are right or wrong. It's not two-way communications like true social media would be. But there are a lot of web-based platforms coming about. We know about Smart Music. I assume everyone knows about Music First Classroom and something like Quaver's World. A lot of new innovations. PMEA News, I don't know what the current issue has in it, but just about every issue has something to do with technology. We've heard about mobile phone use in the choral classroom. And we've heard Mark Despocatus did a really good article about how to promote your music program going to the next level using marketing tools. You just need to look at our webinar catalog. We have at least 2 webinars on flipping the classroom and about using video lessons to reach students. Those are all up on our website. Now, a couple of these this is homework assignments. And of course, I won't know you do these, but if you're curious about how emerging technology could be used in music education, I would read Amanda Green's article, and I would go to Mrs. Miracle's Music Room website. Both of those have significant things on social media for teachers. And AFME has Music in a Minuet blog posts. And there's at least, I just grabbed 4 articles about social media and teachers. Mrs. Miracle gets very, very specific about pins of the month. If you folks don't know Pinterest, it's a place where you can see lots of pictures, sometimes really good bulletin board materials. And you can go and pull them down and look for certain ones. Facebook chat groups, Kodai, or General Music. Facebook pages of individuals. There's a band directors talk shop Facebook page. I'm understanding there are a lot more of these, and this is just a tiny slice of things you can look at. Mrs. Miracle's Music Room website has a lot of information on that. She talks about Twitter music educators to follow, Instagram hashtag searches and accounts to follow if you have an Instagram. I do not, I don't know what the difference is, but it looks like that you can talk about specific subject matter as well as specific like websites, people. And everyone knows what YouTube is as a very appropriate tool of a library of performances. Amanda Green wrote several years ago, Social Media Today. It's kind of hard. I put things together for you to look at, and some of them are a few years old. And in this business, a few years old is probably like 2 decades old. She, for example, suggested using Twitter or maybe Facebook to send out practice reminders to students. Like this if you practice this evening, you know. And she also suggested using a program called Vine, which has been discontinued. But there are a whole gang of others. I looked up Vidi, Geek, Clip, all of those guys. Some of them are for fee, but most of them are free, that you can record a 6-second excerpt of your practicing and send it to the teacher. Of course, YouTube comes up again. And then she suggests that you should send out reminders and practice tips. Everything from, hey, we have an after-school rehearsal next week to how to deal with 7/4 time. So I would go look at her article. Now, Edutopia is probably considered one of the big daddies of all resources. And I just pulled one article off. It's 2013, Social Media for Teachers. And it basically gives ideas how you could use some of these tools, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest. Now I go back to ethics. I always fall back on ethics. It's all about ethics. It's all about decision making you have to make when you use these things. There is a fantastic model code of ethics for educators. The Pennsylvania Department of Education endorses it. It is the only code of ethics I know that we have in our profession or in all teaching profession. National Association for State Directors of Teacher Education certification, if you could say all those words, NASTEC, created it. Your Pennsylvania Department of Education has only a code of conduct. So this is good, and they have a principle on ethical use of technology that can be broken down here, responsible and ethical use, safety and well-being of the students, confidentiality, and appropriate use. If you have not seen this code of ethics, I would recommend, once we're done tonight, to just click on this link, pop one of these things into your printer. It's not a real long one. It's a very extensive code of ethics. But who's the #1 code of ethics, shall we say, filter? That's not my grandma there, but it's grandma. That's the litmus test. If you're not really sure if something you're doing is appropriate, just show it to your grandma or show it. Imagine it's on the front page of a newspaper that your grandma reads. This is called the grandma litmus test. And basically it's 6 questions that you should be answering yes to all of them. 1, 3, and 5 in particular. If you answered no, it's the end of it. Don't even consider it. And then if you can still say yes to 2, 4, 6, you're probably on the right path. To younger teachers especially, I recommend that we do a little bit of cleaning up, curating your online presence. Would not be a bad idea to, if you're trying to get a job, for example, to search your name and see what comes up. You need to delete any provocative or inappropriate postings. Get rid of any photos or posts that include drinking or drugs, obviously. Anything that's discriminatory, any content that complains about a previous employer or colleague, and anything that's cynical or grumpy. This is coming from it's a McAfee website. It's very, very good advice. Now, that was the unhappy, but the good one is if we were really smart enough, and my generation was not smart enough on using social media, we could create a really wonderful, positive persona by putting things up on our Facebook or whatever that shows a professional image, friendly, positive personality. I have well-rounded and a wide range of interests and models my communication skills. That's your profile. You could really clean it up and do a very good job of marketing yourself. As McAfee will say, like it or not, they're watching you. And even if you're currently employed, you can bet somebody who managed your future is on your digital trail. Now, I was trying to find some more materials for this workshop tonight, and I bumped into Kathleen Morris. Her website's down at the bottom of this. She put this up on Pinterest. And these are 10 internet safety tips for teachers. Starting off, 1, making the most of technology. 2, being aware of your internet use guidelines. 3, making your own internet use policy. If you have a computer in your room, or if your kids go to the lab, they should know what the internet use policies are. And number 4, we should discuss internet safety precautions regularly and authentically. 5, be a role model in such things as citing research, giving correct credit for the people who are creating material, etiquette, what is appropriate and not, and keeping on the right side of copyright law. 6, find out how your students are using internet. Abby knows that we've been trying to connect with our college students, music education people, and that's been a challenge. We send out emails from Constant Contact, but the students tell me email is the last form of communication that they would read. I'm pretty sure a lot of my collegiate communiques are getting deleted right out of their mailboxes. That actually the college students use more social media, maybe not even the ones I'm using, special Facebook pages or whatever. So you should take some time to find out how your students are using internet. 7, encourage your parents and students to talk to you if there's any concerns. 8, use sensible email names. I have to tell the younger students, don't go around saying, I'm the greatest tuba player at gmail.com. Come up with some professional emails, addresses, privacy settings, and strong passwords. 9, don't put anything online that you wouldn't want your grandma to read. And 10, consider if you'd like to connect with students or parents on social media. Yes, anybody have a question? I guess I'm just rambling on here. No chance for you guys to get a word in edgewise. At this point, any comments or questions? At least I can put you to sleep. That's good. Okay, now let's have some fun. There are a couple really good stories of using social media. This one actually has a twist in it. We won't be able to show the whole video, but I believe, Terry, you put this up on the mentor page somewhere. This gentleman, Derek Muller, is very inspiring. He calls himself a physicist, filmmaker, and television presenter, but he's a teacher. And he's a founder of a YouTube channel which has captured a huge number of subscribers. Let's listen to a little of him.
I have here a Slinky. This is a kid's toy. But a few years ago, I tried out something with it that most people don't often do. It's fairly basic. All I'm going to do is I'm going to dangle the Slinky like so. My Slinky is extended under its own weight. What I want to do is drop it. What I'm going to ask you to do is predict what will happen when it falls. Obviously, the Slinky will fall to the ground. My question to you is, how will it fall? Will it stay stretched out like this as it's falling? Or maybe the top will fall faster than the bottom? Or perhaps when I let go, the bottom might come up? These are all options that I've heard. But what I'm going to request from you is that you make a prediction right now and you commit to it. Because scientific research has shown that if you don't make a prediction, what you learn from this will be no more than if you never saw this at all. So has everyone made their prediction? exactly how the slinky will fall. Now, if I did this live for you, you might not be able to see it. So I have already filmed it beforehand in about 800 frames per second slow motion to make it really clear exactly what happens when the slinky falls. The bottom of the slinky remains completely motionless until the whole slinky has collapsed. It's as though it's defying gravity. Now, one thing I know, if a little slinky is good, then a big slinky is even better. See, now we're talking, right? This is not just a phenomenon that slinkies obey. This is the way all objects work. If you hold a steel rod from the top and you let it go, the top of that steel rod really starts falling before the bottom of the steel rod. That is because that release of the tension needs to propagate through the whole material. Now in a slinky, it does it particularly slowly, which allows us to see it. But the takeaway, the real piece of learning that we have here is that disturbances take time to propagate. You think that gravity should be pulling the bottom down immediately when I let go, but the tension is holding it up until it can relax throughout the slinky. Now that you've seen it in slow motion, I bet you can see it live. You guys ready? In 3, 2, 1. Right, you can see that.
And he goes on. Now, one of the things I wanted to show is this is the number of people that he has reached. He talks about reaching just a single student tutoring. Then he was lucky to have I guess a charter school or something, and he had 14 students to one. And then he became a professor in a college, and he said 400 in one of those really large lecture classes, 1 to 400. And then he created this channel, YouTube channel, that he made little videos, and his numbers are now 1 to 250
views
million
worldwide. I think that's extraordinary. It's an extraordinary opportunity, and it demonstrates the difference that an individual like myself can have. It was interesting to hear from Paul. You know, Paul wasn't making videos.
Not me, somebody else. So here is his channel.
Of my life.
I believe science is beautiful.
It feels absolutely incredible.
But science is not always intuitive.
The first principle is that you must not fool yourself. And you are the easiest person to fool.
My mission is to help others not fool themselves.
What makes water?
Water.
Okay, what elements does it take to make water?
H2O.
So what does that mean?
It is water.
What's the difference between blue light and red light? The color. There wasn't stuff, and then there was. Like, where did that stuff come from? Magic.
How long does it take for the Earth to go around the sun?
Where it comes from. 24 hours? Obviously, that is.
Earth around the sun.
Sometimes it's best to make people think for themselves.
Now, I don't want to give you the answer straight away.
Watch
I would like you to
this.
think about it and perhaps make me a video response. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to help people learn, including making a fool of myself.
This allows it to form bonds with its 4 nearest neighbors.
I held it.
What's up?
I said, what electricity? I do all of this because I want to help others see the beauty of science. That's awesome. That's amazing. I'm amazed.
Oh my goodness, I really like this project. I'm learning something.
Go the laws of physics. Whoa, look at that. Like the eyes of a frog.
That's his element. And now this is a 19-minute video. You really owe it to yourself. actually really entertaining. To view the whole video, I have to stop it there. But the one question I might ask you is, how much influence would you like to have as a teacher? And how far would you like to go? He's using YouTube. Now, there's something a little surprising at the end of his video. He would say that the internet is not a revolution. It's not a way to revolutionize education. Kids still learn the same way. We had moving pictures, and we had radio, then we had television. We kept saying, oh, this will revolutionize. We'll use half as many teachers. We'll have all this wonderful technology, these groundbreaking ways to do things. He says he is a voice of caution to be aware that technology is not automatically the revolution for education. It's really good. I recommend you to view the rest of that one. Now, how many of you have seen this one? This is for those, anybody teach choir in the group here? I know I have a band director, at least 1, 2 band directors. Who teaches choir? Anybody? No? Well, can you imagine dealing with 50 voices coming from one person? And this is between 2015 and 18. He has a whole Disney playlist. And I won't play very much of it, but I'll give you a little taste of it. He's arranged this music, and he used multi-track recording, and each square is himself performing. So it's quite amazing what he's done. Now, this took a long time.
The sun rolling high through the sapphire sky keeps great and small of the endless round. Circle of life, and it moves us through this vast
And I think there's a modulation coming soon. He gave us permission to use his YouTube, although you are permitted to use your YouTube. 50 voices at the same time recorded on a multi-track thing. Could you imagine how you could use technology to inspire your students? I have only one final example, a success story, another happy face. Everybody know Eric Whitaker? This man is a genius. The picture here shows him with 32 voices throughout the world tied in to a live performance, large choir. It's a TED Talk, and our time is running short here, so I can't really play the whole thing, but he starts with the performance of his piece, Cloudburst, which he wrote specifically for this. And I'm going to, I hate doing this, but I'm going to scoot you into the performance first. The soloist, and he brings in his 32. Where are they? There. It even shows where each person is performing live in his virtual choir. And I hate to do that to you. You'll have to go listen to the full performance because it's absolutely inspiring. So how do we do in the balancing of pros and cons in social media? And maybe just a few ideas and maybe tools for you to go look at. There were a couple more Boons than Nemesis. And I would say that if you use your common sense, you understand the concept of ethics, you are aware of student relationships, student-teacher boundaries, and we have to learn the technology. The technology is always a major challenge. What I've done is I put the copy of this presentation at my blog site, which is the first set of words there, paulfox.blog. You need to go up to the top menu where it says training/jobs and click on that and scroll just a little bit and you'll find these slides. So you could actually, you don't have to worry about trying to find the content or type in anything. So thank you very much for coming tonight to our little webinar for PMEA. And if you have any questions, please send me an email. I'll be happy to help in any way I can.
Thanks so much, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, guys.
Everyone on the call, I will, or on the webinar, I will be sending out an email probably tomorrow, Friday at the latest, just with a link to the recording so you have access to that and links to the 2 surveys to complete for Act 48 hours. So.
Okay, guys.